My name is Efrain Peña. I'm the campus pastor here at Southfield Santa Clarita. As I said before, it is truly an honor to have you here this morning with us. My heart and my prayer is that God would grab a hold of your heart today and He would inspire you and encourage you and for you to see life and do life differently than how you came in this morning. And so we are in week 5 of our summer series called Life Hacks, right? Life is complicated and we all need a little bit of help in trying to figure it all out, right? We do. And so over the last several weeks, we have been diving into the book of James and pulling out some wisdom, basically some life hacks. Yup, real practical insight for navigating pressure, people, and the parts of life that feel the most overwhelming to us. That's what the series has been all about. And so on week 5, we're going to touch this next topic, which is why you care about shallow stuff. Why you care about. Last week was good. Last week was really good. If you missed it, you can go on our YouTube channel. You can go to Spotify and find it and listen to it, because last week was really, really good. This week, I think it's going to be just as good. Right? So why you care about shallow stuff? Let me ask you this. You ever tried to impress someone by pretending you liked something you really didn't? Or maybe you felt proud of a decision you made until you saw someone else doing better. Or maybe you made a major life choice based on what everyone else was doing and then you regretted it. I think many of us have been there before. But I want to share my little story, right? For me, it was the first time I got to purchase an expensive baseball bat when I was in high school, right? I purchased it with my own money, right? And she was beautiful. Yeah, she was. I would take a different bus route home just so I can go and see it at the store. Right, the bat was nowhere near my bus route, so it'll take me an extra 40 minutes to take this bus route home in order so I could stop at the sporting goods store. We didn't have like Dick's, Sporting Good, or Five Good. This was like a local mom and pop shop, right? And so it was this incredible, beautiful bat, right? Right? To have a bat for a baseball player was like everything. Like if most kids didn't have their bats. You borrowed your teammate's bat. But when you had your own, you reached the big time. Like you reached the big times, right? And so I remember watching, it was beautiful. It was on the rack, and you couldn't touch. First of all, I had to go on eBay, not eBay. I had to go on this magazine called Eastbay. Everybody know Eastbay? Sorry. See, Eastbay was a sporting goods magazine. It had sneakers and sports equipment. It was incredible, and that's why I saw the bat. And I was like, ooh, I got to get it. And so I went to the store to see if they had it, and they had it, and it was expensive. And I was like, oh my God, I got to save for this. So I tried to save everything, every birthday gift money, all of it. I tried to save it, and finally I had enough to go get it. And so I went there, and I went to the guy, and it was the type of bat that you couldn't just touch it. You had to ask the store clerk to help you. All right, and so I raised my hand. I want to see that. He goes, "You gonna buy it?" And I was like, I'm gonna buy it. And so we get there. He unlocks it. I hold it. It's like, oh, right, this beautiful thing. It was absolutely incredible, right? And so I get there, he unlocks it, I grab it, and I get to feel it. And if you're a baseball player, you hold that bat between your fingers and your palms. And it's like an incredible feeling. You start going like this, and you start working it there. And then you look around and you start, this feels good. This is incredible, right? I have this bat, and this is like the best thing ever. Every dollar I got went to this bat. And so I give the money. I was so proud. I got to the register, give the guy my money, because at that time it was cash, right? Cash. And he puts it in like this long paper bag. Like it was specifically made for these bats. I put it in there and nobody could see it. But I knew this was a bat, right? And so I get there, I give the clerk my money, he wrapped it, and I'm on my way. I felt special, man. I felt this incredible, incredible feeling. And I was going to hit some massive dingers, right? For you who don't know, that's home runs, right? I was going to hit, man, this bat was going to be absolutely incredible, right? I couldn't wait to go to practice and show my teammates what I got. They were all going to want to use it. I knew it. They were all going to want to use it. So then I fast forward. I get to the park. I bring my bat, right? And as I'm walking towards my teammates, I see them huddled, right? They're all huddled around each other as if looking at something. And they were all intrigued, right? Because they were head down and they were like, ooh. And you could hear from a little distance, ooh, ah, ooh, oh, that's so cool, right? And I'm like, man, what is going on? And when I got close enough to them, they yelled, hey, E, come, check this out. Danny got a new bat. It's the new Easton C-Core Reflex. And that made my heart sink. You see, that bat was newer than my bat. It took me so long to save the money that my bat was no longer the thing. And Danny got a brand new bat, and it was beautiful. And so I quickly grabbed my bat and put it behind me, right? And then I hear one of my teammates, E, you got a new bat too? Oh, that's the older model. As if he was the only one disappointed at that time. I started shrinking, hiding it, no longer wanting to share my bat with anyone. What felt like enough for that day, super excited, super proud, going in, suddenly didn't feel like that anymore. Suddenly it didn't feel like it was enough anymore. And that was the moment I learned what comparison can do. It doesn't just make us discontent. It makes us forget who we really are. It doesn't just steal our joy. It rewrites our story. What started as gratitude became embarrassment. What started as confidence became insecurity. All because I saw what someone else had, and I assumed that it was better. Now that story was years and years ago, but I still feel the same tension today. It just shows up in different ways now. As an adult, I've felt it when someone gets the job that I wanted, hits the milestones that I haven't, or posts the version of life that I wish I was living. I felt it when I walked into a room and instantly wondered if I was smart enough, handsome enough, successful enough to belong there. And I know that I'm not the only one. We've all felt that quiet pressure to prove something, to catch up, to measure yourself against the people around you or the ones you scroll past every day. We've all had a moment where something felt right until we saw what someone else had. You were excited about your apartment until you saw someone's kitchen renovation on Instagram. You felt good about parenting until you talked to the mom who makes her kids' lunches in bento boxes and still has time for yoga and homemade muffins. You were proud of your job until someone you know got promoted, launched their own thing, or went viral for theirs. You were content, even grateful, until comparison walked in and whispered, you are falling behind. Friends, we all drift. We all drift into chasing things that we didn't even care about before. until someone else had them. A newer car, a cooler vacation, a more toned body, a more aesthetic life. Think about that. In today's time, we are watching other people's lives and thinking, oh, they have an aesthetic life. Sometimes it's subtle. You're not even trying to impress anyone. You just don't want to feel, well, less than. But that quiet insecurity starts shaping your choices. You stretch your budget just to keep up. You overwork just to stay ahead. You present the best version of your life online, even when the real version feels nothing like it. And sometimes the pressure doesn't just come from social media. It comes from your own expectations. Maybe you thought you'd be further along by now, married by now, making more money by now, more confident by now. And without even realizing it, you've been chasing someone else's version of success. And quite frankly, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Listen, comparison convinces us to perform for people we don't even know, to prove something that we are not even sure matters. Have you been there before? Yeah. And what's even trickier is that we live in a world that celebrates this kind of chasing. Clout, status, image, winning, or as Noah likes to say, aura. We rank people by their looks, their followers, their paycheck, their house, their style, their it factor. We take our cues on what matters from what's trending lately. But if we're not careful, friends, we can start chasing a life that we don't even want. Just because someone told us it's what we should want. So why do we care so much about shallow stuff? Why do we care so much? Why do we chase things that don't align with who we want to be? Why do we compare, compete, and crave attention even when it leaves us feeling anxious and empty? James points out for us the difference between real wisdom and fake wisdom. Not by how much someone knows, but by how they live and what truly drives them. James chapter 3, verse 13 says that if you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. In other words, real wisdom shows up in your life, not just your language. You don't prove wisdom with how smart you sound. You prove it by how you live your life. How do you live your life? Verse 14 through 16, it says, "But if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying." Verse 15, But for jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. Verse 16, "For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind." I know, that's super harsh, right? That's hard. Think about that. And I probably said it. I probably read it in a nice tone. But you can't get away from the depth and the reality of those words. That's strong language. When our decisions are driven by jealousy, by trying to prove ourselves or to protect an image, we open the door, friends, to chaos. Anybody ever felt like that? Like things are out of alignment inside of you. Like you're doing all of the right things, but something just feels off. That's what James is talking about here. But then he describes for us what God's wisdom actually looks like. He says in verse 18 and 17 and 18, but the wisdom from God is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. That sounds better, right? This sounds like such a different life than the one maybe many of us have been chasing around. It's a life not driven by competition or image or ego, but character, humility, and love. So the question now becomes this, friends. What kind of wisdom is shaping you? What kind of wisdom is shaping you? Who am I letting influence my decisions, my desires, and my direction? Think about that. Who are you letting influence your decisions, your desires, and your direction? What kind of wisdom is shaping you? We can look at the life of someone in the Bible who experienced this kind of tug of war that many of us experience and feel firsthand. Peter, right? The Apostle Peter, who was one of Jesus' closest followers. The dude was passionate, was bold, and loyal, at least in theory. But part of his story is a cautionary tale about how easy it is for us to kind of drift into shallow, image-driven kind of thinking, even with the best intentions. So in Matthew 16 verses 13 to 16, right? Jesus is asking his disciples, he's asking them this question: who do people say I am? Who do people say I am? And so they throw out these options, right? Elijah, the John the Baptist, right? A prophet. So then he gets a little more specific, and he says, he asks them this question: who do you say I am? Who do you say I am? And Peter steps up and says, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. So what we get from this part of Scripture, we get that it is clear that Peter knows who he is. Peter knows who Jesus is. Then in verse 17, Jesus tells Peter right? He has a liking to Peter, and he tells Peter, upon this rock I will build my church. Peter's finally getting it, right? And Jesus is trusting him with influence, with leadership and identity, right? This is wisdom from above. But then just a few verses later, things take a turn. Jesus explains to Peter that he, Jesus, is going to suffer and die. And rather than listening to what Jesus is truly saying, Peter gets all uptight and he rebukes Jesus. He pulls Jesus aside and he basically says, that's not going to happen to you, buddy. Not on my watch. That's not going to happen. Then in verse 23, Jesus tells us that Jesus turns to Peter and says, get away from me, Satan. Get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's. And I find it super interesting that in a matter of about 4 or 5 verses here, things went from like, man, I'm going to build my church upon you, and Jesus telling him, you need to back up, fool. Right? Peter goes from the rock to the stumbling rock in just a matter of a few moments. Why? Why did that happen? I'll tell you why. Because Peter shifted from God's wisdom to human wisdom, to human thinking. He was looking at the situation through the lens of success, safety, and status, not surrender. And we do this as well. You take a job that pays more but drains your soul because success felt more important than purpose. You date someone who checks all of the boxes on paper even though something feels off spiritually because it looks like the right one. You say no to serving, giving, or helping because it doesn't seem strategic for your goals right now. You pray for God's direction, but then only follow the option that seems most successful in the world's eyes. You post something online to appear impressive or spiritual, but deep down inside, it's about image more than integrity. Unfortunately, for Peter, it gets worse before it gets better. In Matthew 26, verses 69 through 75, it talks about Peter disowning Jesus. He was Peter's homeboy. He was Jesus' homeboy. And he disowns Jesus. Jesus has been arrested. Peter's hanging back in the shadow, right? A servant girl recognizes him and says, "You were with Jesus." And Peter immediately, not me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Not only did he do it once, not only did he do it twice, he did it 3 times. 3 times he denied Jesus, just as Jesus had predicted. The rooster crows and Peter breaks down and he weeps. Why? Because Peter realized at that moment who he had been listening to. In one moment, Peter had been shaped by heaven, and in another, by fear, by pride, by pressure, by people. And listen, we get it. We understand it because that happens to us this very day. It happens to us. We are all in when Jesus talks about love, humility, and generosity and service, but then we begin to scroll. We begin to scroll and compare and hustle and perform. We try to build a life that looks good because deep down inside, we want to be good. We want to matter. We want to feel valuable. We just don't always know how to get there. So we follow the loudest voices, the most popular trends, the biggest personalities. We build lives based on other people's definitions of success, and then wonder why we feel so burnt out, why we feel insecure and unsatisfied. Friends, Peter's story reminds us that it's not how close you are. It's about what you are chasing. What you're chasing. Listen, I believe that it's possible for us, right? It's possible for us to believe in Jesus and still be out of step with his heart. I do. I believe that it's possible for us to come to church on Sunday, to lift up our hands and worship, and still be out of step with Jesus' heart. You can show up for Jesus and still not show up for what matters to him. Does that make sense? Being in this room doesn't mean that you are in sync with him. Proximity isn't the same as alignment. Ooh. Ouch or amen. One of those two options. Proximity isn't the same as alignment. See, some of us want to be close to Jesus, which isn't bad. It really isn't. In fact, it's great. But if we placed an emphasis on aligning our lives with Jesus, guess what would happen? If we placed an emphasis on aligning our lives with Jesus, guess what would happen? We would also be close to Jesus and have our lives be a reflection of his heart. His heart is for us to be generous with what he has given to us, to be loving, to be gracious, to be humble, to be compassionate. And every opportunity that we do opposite of that, we are just walking around Jesus, but not really walking with Jesus. And maybe you're here this morning and you're feeling like you've been chasing the wrong thing. Friends, the good news is that Peter's story also reminds us that failure is not final. Failure isn't final, and Jesus doesn't give up on us when we get it wrong. Peter's lowest moment wasn't the end of his story. Jesus restores him later, right, in John 21, and he calls him back into purpose and tells him to lead with love. And the same is true for us here today. So here's a question we all have to wrestle with today and the days to come. Who are you looking to? Who are you looking to? Because who you look up to determines what you live out. So who are you looking up to? Who are you chasing? Who are you following? Is it someone on social media? Is it a family friend? Is it a neighbor? Is it an icon, a superstar, an athlete, a rock star? Who? Who are you looking up to? Because who you're looking up to will determine how you live out your life. What do you do, friends, when you realize the person shaping your priorities, your values, or your direction isn't Jesus, but someone louder, flashier, or more popular? What do you do when you recognize that your life is starting to look like someone else's highlight reel, but not at all like the life that God is inviting you into? Let's be real here this morning. It's not easy. It's not easy to admit that you've been chasing the wrong things. I won't even ask anyone to raise their hand and admit that you've been chasing the wrong things, especially when it looks like everyone else is chasing the same things. Success, recognition, approval, being liked, being followed, being admired. Those aren't bad things, but they're not the ultimate things. And if you're not careful, friends, you'll spend your life following a version of success that isn't even yours to begin with. It belonged to whoever that person you were following. Here's the truth. You don't accidentally end up wise. You drift toward what's loudest, not what's deepest. Proverbs 13:20 reminds us to walk with the wise and become wise. In other words, spend time seeking wisdom. Spend time with someone who is giving wisdom, and you will become wise. That's why this is the moment, right? This is why this is the moment to pause and to ask yourself, who am I really becoming? Who am I really becoming? Because what you admire, you eventually imitate. You eventually imitate. Let me give you a tangible illustration. The compass and the clock. The compass and the clock. Think about to yourself, what do these two things have in common? What are they? How are they different? Are they? I'm going to share something with you here. I want you to think about it this way. A lot of us live by the standard of a clock, always looking at what time it is. Some of you right now be like, what time is it? We almost done? We're over here? You live by that standard. Always looking at what time it is, how fast we're going, how much we're getting done, productivity, hustle, performance. Faster is better, more is success. But here's the catch. You can move really fast in the wrong direction. That's why you also need a compass. The compass doesn't tell you how fast you're going. It tells you where you're headed. And that's a different kind of wisdom. The clock says, dude, you're behind. The compass is asking, you are becoming who you were made to be. Do you see that? Friends, real wisdom helps you stop racing and start realigning. It shifts the question from am I winning to am I walking in truth? Am I admired to am I becoming more loving? Am I successful to I am faithful to what matters? And sometimes it's the smallest act of love or humility that recenters the compass. So here's how we want to put this into practice this week. I want you to do something for someone in your home, a small act of service that shows love and humility. In your home, not to a stranger, not to a co-worker, but in your home. Right? There's 6 peñas right now today in the house. Do something for someone in your home, a small act of service that shows love and humility. And I want you to write a note, right? Do the dishes without being asked, right? Leave an encouraging message on the mirror. Buy their favorite coffee. Something small but sincere. Because that's how real wisdom works, friends. It doesn't shout, it serves. It doesn't dominate, it dignifies. And it doesn't impress, it's generous. I'm going to wrap this up this morning for those of you still working on the clock. What if, I'm going to give you a bunch of what ifs right now. What if this is the moment where you could start to build a life that Jesus desires for you? What if? Not because you suddenly have all the answers, not because you read a new book or found the perfect morning routine, but because for the first time in a long time, you get to choose who you are becoming. You get to choose. You get to choose who you are becoming instead of just drifting toward who the world tells you to be? What if you stopped letting people you don't know, you say you know them, but you don't know them. What if you stopped letting people you don't know define what matters most to you? What if you decided that status and image and approval aren't worth your soul? That your soul is worth more. Galatians 1:10 reminds us not to worry to win the approval of others. Don't worry about that. So what if you started looking to Jesus, not just as a good example, but as the one true guide for a life of wisdom, purpose, and peace? Because I don't know about you, but those are some of the three things that I'm looking for: wisdom, purpose, and peace. Because here's what happens when you let the wrong voices shape your vision. You start chasing upgrades instead of embracing gratitude. You start comparing your calling to someone else's content. You keep grinding for approval and still feel empty when you get it. Romans 12:2 tells us to let God transform you. Let God do the change in you. But here's what happens when you start letting Jesus lead your life. You now get anchored in what actually matters. You become less reactive and more rooted. You stop trying to impress and start learning how to love. So what if you actually lived like your influence came from who you serve? From who you serve, not who you are seen with. Imagine your home being filled with peace and not pressure. Your friendships being built on depth, not drama. Your goals shaped by wisdom, not ego. Your life reflecting something deeper, truer, and more lasting than whatever is trending. What if people started asking about the difference in you, not because of your platform, but because of your presence? Because you listen more, because you speak life now, you walk humbly, you show up, and maybe, just maybe, that kind of life doesn't just inspire others, it actually frees you as well. Because, friends, when you stop chasing what doesn't last, you start living for what truly does. So who are you becoming? Who are you becoming? Maybe even more importantly, who are you looking up to? Because if you want to live a different kind of life than the one that you're currently living, you've got to follow a different kind of leader. The good news is that maybe now, after today's message, you know who to look up to, what wisdom you should seek. Hebrews 12:2 reminds us to keep our eyes on Jesus. Keep your eyes on Jesus. I know, sometimes this is super hard. Not all of us. Some of you don't even have social media. Some of you don't even have a phone that allows you to get on the internet. I get that. Right? Some of you. And having this can sometimes distort things, can lead you down the wrong path, gonna make you see things differently than what I've shared with you today. And so my words of encouragement for you today is keep your eyes on Jesus. Allow him to take the lead. He's the one you should be following. He's the one you should be imitating. He's the one who will give you the wisdom that you need in order to navigate your life here on earth. Does that make sense? Let's pray, Lord.
South Hills Church, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for watching our service online. Whether you're watching it for the first time or you're watching it again because you enjoyed the service so much from the weekend, I'd like to take a moment and dive into our giving. Every week we give people the opportunity to give back and give to the local church so that God can continue to bless your lives and bless your finances. Here at South Hills, we believe that everything comes from God. We believe that He's the one that chose us and brought us into this world, gave us our gifts and talents and abilities. And I just want you to know that when we give, we are giving back what God has already given to us. If you've ever seen any of our envelopes at a South Hills campus, you'll see on there that it says, every week at South Hills, your generosity is giving people the opportunity to live a better story. And there's a scripture on there in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21 that says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I want to encourage you today to click down below and set up your giving, whether it's for the first time or whether you're doing reoccurring giving. We have 4 ways to give here at South Hills. 1, you can do it in person at any of our campuses through an envelope. Or 2, you can actually text any amount that you would like to 84321. And the 3rd way is to download our Church Center app. I encourage you to do this one because the Church Center app gives you opportunity to stay connected with our church and your campuses. It's a great tool and resource for you to know what's going on. And the 4th way to give is to give online. You can go to southhills.org/give and you can set up your giving there. Whether you're a guest of our church or whether you are a member of our church, or whether you simply just like to watch our services, I encourage you to trust God with your finances so that He can bless and anoint your finances, and you can be trusting God in this journey of living life to the fullest. I love you, and thank you for watching our online service today.